microphone was working, I'd just give it a test. Good morning, my name is Rearick and I'm one of the 7 trustees of the Living Economies Educational Trust, and we're all here at the event, which is marvellous because we're spread out throughout the country. I was having a lovely talk to our next presenter yesterday, Stephanie, and we're both very puzzled about what all this talk about money and economics and so on is, because we thought this was actually a gathering of musicians and we're wondering whether we're actually at the right place. Stephanie is at heart a creative person, I think. I discovered from my discussions with her yesterday. She's a musician and perhaps that's her first love. Although she did say to me that she also would have loved to have been a filmmaker. But she found the fundraising for that was too difficult. But just coming back to her musicianship side of things, she is a performer in a rock band called Lady Scissors, and she plays drums and sings in that band of women. And a little plug for Stephanie here, she's either just released or about to release a new album, so if you really want to find out about her musical talents, you might want to do a little Google search for Lady Scissors and find their new album. She's also plays piano in clubs and round and about as a solo pianist. So I'm really delighted that she's come all the way from America to give us a concert this evening. What time was that to be on? But that's not all. Wait, we have more. She also co-owns a coffee house. And in her past, she worked for Greenpeace for a number of years. But she came to realise that the economy was working against a lot of the things that she loves. And I think my take on what I understood from the discussion last night was that perhaps was really the driver for her to get involved in the activities, the community activities that she has been so heavily and continues to be so heavily involved with to help build a new economy at a community level. So she's been involved in establishing a large time bank, and she is also active in mutual aid networks, which I'm sure she's going to tell us a lot more about very shortly, as well as having been involved in the establishment of a local political party in her region. So, folks, I'd like you to welcome from Wisconsin in the USA, Stephanie Rearick.
Thank you so much. That was my best introduction ever. It's a complete pleasure to be here. I'm so happy to be here. And yes, that was excellent. As Warwick sort of implied, I hate money. I hate thinking about money. I find it so tedious. So I decided to think really hard about it once for a while until we can break through and none of us have to think about it again. So that's my goal. And we are in it to win it. My goal for today is to have all of you leaving here believing that not only is it completely possible for us to change how we're living and change our economy, but that it's imminent. So I just want to tell you for a moment about this tour that I'm on. So I have been just blessed with this wonderful grace of having worked with people all around the world, many of whom I've never met. Phil Stevens has been supporting and working with us in Dane County for several years, hosting the server that our time bank is living on and teaching us a lot about savings pools here. And then Cherie and Margaret and Helen and Taya and a number of people who I still am just getting to know have jumped in and organized this wonderful tour for me around this country that I've always wanted to come to, where I'm going to learn a lot more about what you're doing. You're doing a lot of things here that we want to do. Savings pools especially, that's our next step. Could you put your hand up if you're involved in a savings pool? Excellent, wave around. Who's involved in a time bank? Who shares stuff with their neighbors sometimes? Who takes care of kids or elderly people or people when they're sick? So we are living the new, old economy that we need to get back to. And then, I really do believe that we have nothing to lose but our chains. And when we were, the discussion last night was very powerful for me in a lot of ways. And I learned a lot. But one thing that continues to be reinforced for me is that we have this perception that we can't do things any differently, or it's going to be so hard, we have to figure out what's wrong with things now. I believe that it's a lot of our perception that people have lived in harmony and economic sustainability in this country and in my country before Europeans came. And I think we have a lot to learn about going back to our roots. I think that part of the issue that we really need to let go of is we've all grown up, not all of us, but those of us who know that the economy really needs to change have grown up in this situation, and it's easy to see this as this is what human experience is, but it's really a tiny, tiny slice of human experience. It's a particular culture, a particular cultural worldview, and it's pretty recent compared to how long humans have been living on this planet. So I just really feel that it's essential to bring that back into our hearts, I think, and our minds. So just another example of this tour and all these things that I've been doing in the context of mutual aid networks and in the context of time banks have a very excellent culture of supporting one another, at least in the areas that I've been involved. So I'm going to go around the country. I'm going to learn a lot more about how you're doing what you do. I'm going to share ways that we're innovating on some of those things. We'll each take them back in our local communities, test them out, improve upon them, share again, repeat, share again, repeat, share again, repeat, and it's done. This slide says something about redesigning work for a cooperative regenerative economy. You used to say do it ourselves, economic justice and community resilience. So I just want to share a little bit about the journey, and I'm going to tell you how we see this happening in the world. So as Warwick mentioned, I started a time bank about 10 years ago, and it was in reaction to seeing the economy driving everything I care about the wrong direction, and realizing that if working on any other piece of it, in absence of dealing with the economic forces, is like rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic. So I started the Dane County Time Bank in 2005, and I do want to share, there's one way that we've sort of innovated in time banking. We're not the only ones, so that's another thing I try to do is like not take too much credit for things. Time banking is, people tend to think of it as something that started in the 1980s and 90s, but of course people have been sharing their time since time immemorial. Could you put your hand up if you don't know how time banking works? Okay, wonderful. Oh, that's very unusual in my context. So we started the time bank and thought a key question is how do we build an economy that creates and rewards abundance? But then later on started thinking, we need to be careful about that. I don't really just want to make it easier for people to exchange stuff. I don't want to make it easier to sell widgets in a local market. I think we really need to really think about in service to what. So our time bank, we started doing something we call applied time banking, where we use the time bank to make visible the real wealth in our community, which is all of the people and their talents and capacities and skills, their latent talents and capacities and skills. A whole lot of people aren't given the opportunity to really find out what their passion is and develop it. So we start the time bank and identify the assets we have in a community and then put those to work in service of a project that we want to do. So I am guessing you're all aware that I come from the belly of the beast in the United States of America. We imprison more people than anyone in the world, and we have enormous racial disparities in how we do that. I live in Madison, Wisconsin, which is known as a very progressive, lovely little enclave, and it is for white people. We have some of the biggest racial disparities in the country. We have the largest racial disparity in the criminal system in the country. And it's easy for white people in upper middle classes, or probably most white people in the city, to not be aware of that. So we started a time bank with an eye toward employing it to build some restorative and transformative justice opportunities. So what we did was we developed a lot of relationships with a lot of people and organizations in the community, including some of our police officers who are allies who want something better to do. And one police officer, we learned from a different time bank, from the Washington, D.C. time bank was doing a time bank youth court where kids who are getting in trouble with the police can come to a jury of their peers and engage in a restorative justice practice instead of going into the criminal system. I don't know if you've heard this term. We have a term that is a real thing in my country called the school to prison pipeline. So we'd like to break that pipeline. So we started in this one little neighborhood. We decided to ask forgiveness rather than permission because we were having a hard time getting the bureaucracy to actually move on this. And that one police officer started referring a few kids into the program. They did really well. All of the jurors who are hearing the cases earn time bank hours for their time. The respondents get a chance to, so they do something to make up for any harm that was caused. They do something to address any problems that are contributing to their issues. So sometimes they'll have to take a nonviolent conflict resolution class or employment skills and money management. But then they also get connected with people or resources that can build their strengths and capacities. And then they have the whole time bank to draw on for that. So one young woman had to get drum lessons. A number of kids go to this Hancock Center for Dance and Movement Therapy. Someone who wanted to be a massage therapist had to get together with a massage therapist several times and really learn what would be required of her to do that. So not only are they connecting with these resources that can be ongoing, but they're building those social supports that are the things that really help kids succeed. Social, economic, educational, recreational opportunities. We're building that in the time bank side. We're not waiting for permission. We're not waiting for a giant grant so we can pay everyone for every moment of their time. We're connecting our real resources. So another thing I like to remind people when people are talking about, oh, we can't do this anymore because we don't have the resources. I don't, in a lot of workshop contexts, I ask people to, if you're talking about money as a resource, stop. What do you need to get with that money? That's the resource. The money is the way that you obtain it. So there are a lot of different ways we can obtain it, and we know that because you're doing that through time banking and through sharing. So from starting in that one little community with just a few kids, it became really apparent how well it was working. That police officer moved into a high school. We built it up more in that high school and started having really great results. Now all of the high schools in Madison, Wisconsin are paying the time bank to run restorative justice youth courts in the city, and now other schools are starting to contract with the time bank to do that. Now every young person age 12 to 16 who's getting a ticket from the police where they would have to go pay it and start getting into that system, they're given the option now to come into a restorative justice program. 81% of the kids are accepting that option. The demographics, so kids accepting the option are roughly the same as the demographics that are getting the tickets initially, which is still extremely, extremely racially biased. So that's a nut that we continue to have to crack. But they're all getting that opportunity. Our success rates are about 90% generally. So a couple of ways that the time bank has played in, besides building those social supports and being able to sort of fund the project with way less money. We do have a few paid coordinators, but it's very few for the number of people that we're serving. So one young woman got a community garden plot and learned how to garden. A bunch of kids have earned computers through the system, and some of the jurors were looking for language lessons. So again, it's just a way that we can start building these networks and they can stay ongoing. And that's just one example. I do want to also share now it's moving into working with adults, which was always my dream when we started the youth court. I never wanted it to be just for one group of people, but then our municipal judge has asked us to pilot a homelessness restorative justice program that we're doing. They've started a young adult peer court for people who are a little bit deeper end, getting a little bit deeper end trouble. So it has caused system change. And the beauty of it for me is that really what the time bank does is it serves as an invitation for people to come in and help solve this problem ourselves. The police can't build communities. We all know healthy communities are what keep people out of trouble. We can't expect police to do that. And we need to find ways to do it ourselves. So what I'd like to do is show you a little video, and you'll see it looks pretty amateurish, so don't take this as a reflection of my what my filmmaking abilities would be. We did this pretty quickly, spent a lot of time bank hours on it. So yeah, I think that this is pretty good at getting across some of what we're aiming for, so we'll start with this.
Tired of doing the same old job day after day, doing this when you'd rather be doing this? How would you like to do what you like to do? Well, now you can. Introducing mutual aid networks, or the new The Man.
The new The Man values everyone in all kinds of work, women's work too. Here's how it works. We come together as a cooperative or mutual aid network around a common goal: food security, clean energy, community justice, creative projects. We support each other in a network of mutual credit, and when we need things, we turn first to sharing, making and using things like maker spaces and tool libraries, then time banking, where we exchange time credits for abundant and necessary things like care, creativity, or community work, price-based mutual credit for local business, and savings pools for when we need money and can tap into a collectively managed pool of it. Then we add in the processes to make it all work, building the skills we need to come together, identify work that needs done, and make it happen. Learning how to apply our resource sharing tools effectively to our lives and our projects. Relearning how to figure out what we really want to do with our time, and then learning how to share our money and manage it well. We connect lots of individual man projects, large and small, in a network of mutual aid. The main man. Eventually networking our networks into an economy that works for all of us. 100%.
What would it look like if everyone were doing the work they loved, what they felt called to do? What if everyone had the opportunity to build their skills to their maximum capabilities and then apply them to making their communities whole and beautiful?
Let's find out! Join us! Launching now around the world. Give a little money to make a lot happen.
So that isn't really a fundraising pitch for you, although, of course, you're welcome. Yeah, we made that for a crowdfunding campaign. I do want to share, we ended up feeling like there's way too much main man vibe around right now, especially in my country. So we've changed the name of the global network to Humans. We are now Humans United in Mutual Aid Networks. So we'll invite you to join the Humans. And I don't know if you use that term here, working for the man. Is that something that's common in New Zealand? In the United States, when you're doing a corporate job, you're working for the man. So we want to be the new the man. So I'm going to be really explicit. We want to compete. We want to go head to head with the existing structures. So in the US right now, and we're all suffering from it. I know we're in really different contexts here. And as I was coming here, I was traveling into the future. You're a day ahead of us. And I really feel like that. You are very far ahead of us here. For me, it's incumbent on everyone in the United States who lives there to stay and fight as hard as we can to change it so we don't keep stomping on everybody else. And by we, I mean our governments and the people in power beyond that. So part of what my government is doing right now is really deregulating corporations and really giving much, much more power to corporations. So we are organized as cooperatives. It's a form of corporation. And you know, from the introduction, I think you can gather I've been employing people for a really long time at a small coffee house, then starting the Time Bank. We're a nonprofit organization. We've been employing people there, and then engaging with a lot of people to do a lot of different kinds of work. And one of the things that the very wealthy people, the very wealthy white men, or some of them in my country, are always doing is they're like, we're the job creators, so you have to cede all power to us. Everyone needs a job so you can afford to pay for every breath you take. Well, actually, we're the job creators. We really are. The people who run small businesses, the people who run NGOs, the people who create and run time banks and everything else. We really are the job creators, and the jobs we create are a lot better. So I'm very interested in having us assert that and go head to head and play a better game and win. And it's a better game because it's more fun, because we invite everyone in based on common human values. So they're very excellent at co-optation, and my perspective is if everything stays in the capitalist economy where we're using money for everything, that money that gets lent out at interest, that has it fundamentally built in a mechanic that funnels money from people who don't have it to people who do, if we continue to have all of our efforts built on that foundation, it'll always get co-opted. So we believe that by building something on a different foundation that has sharing and cooperation at the heart of it, that we will be able to crack that. And then I want to share another thing, and this came up for me. I wasn't planning to share this, but last night in the panel discussion, the issue about gender came up, and it's a really interesting conversation about that. And one thing that really struck me was this this reality that a lot of the people who really get a lot of things done, the high trust, low profile people being women, most people, I think it happens sort of across the board around the world, time banks tend to be usually like a 70 to 30% ratio of women to men, or 60 to 40. A lot of time banks are led by women. A lot of things on the ground, a lot of work on the ground in cooperative economies is being done by women. And my perspective is a lot of the reason that the high trust people do tend to be low profile when we're women is we, at least I in my reality, are often conditioned to not have the confidence to get a little higher profile with the work that we're doing. And I think that that's one of the things that we need to change in order to move things forward. And I had this wonderful privilege of spending some time with a Native American woman from the United States. She's Dene and also adopted into the Lakota tribe. And she shared with me that she had gone on a vision quest recently, and a spirit came to her and said, "Women today need to speak with the authority of the mother." And I felt so liberated and empowered by that, and feel not only now permission to go ahead and share my ideas with the world, but a mandate. And I really hope that every single person, not just the women, but every single person who feels you have a solution to offer, or feel that you have something that you could do differently in your community, starts to feel not only empowered to do that, but a mandate to do that. I think the time that we live in requires no less of us. So are people familiar with cooperatives? Raise your hand if you're familiar with cooperatives. Great. And I don't know what your cooperative law is here in New Zealand. We are I'm very fortunate to come from a state that has really excellent cooperative law. So a cooperative is a legal structure where every member has ownership, every member has a stake in decision making, every member participates economically. There are a lot of different principles of cooperatives. So when I was running the time bank, one of the things, I always knew that it wasn't the only answer. The reason that I found time banking really compelling is I think it fills the biggest gaps in our current economic life. Mainly being really good at helping to recognize and value things that are very abundant. And recognize and value labor and people who are marginalized in the market economy. So some of that value is in caring for people. All of the labor that goes into running a functioning society that goes unvalued or undervalued. So caring for people, I consider it caregiving, creativity, civic engagement, and community building. All of those things, in my perspective, are infinitely abundant, and there's no reason we should be hamstrung by trying to facilitate those through a resource that's scarce. So I think time banking fits very well there. And so I want to give you another example of something that we have done in our time bank. We started working in a neighborhood that's very economically exploited. It's called Allied Drive. So it's mostly Black and Latino neighborhood, cut off from the rest of the city by big roads. There's no grocery store, no school. The kids get bused to 5 different schools, no library. It's very difficult to take public transportation from there. I could list a number of other things that they lack in infrastructure, and clearly very little economic opportunity and educational opportunity of any sort. So when we were starting the time bank there, we started talking with people in the neighborhood and learning that there was a real lack of trust from between residents and organizations that would come in. So there were constantly organizations coming in to serve the neighborhood and not really doing the things that the neighbors actually wanted to have happen, leaving at inopportune times, for example. And also there's a lack of trust between residents. So what people shared was it would be good to start with a time bank store. So what we did was we took a little field trip to St. Louis and learned from the time bank there. That was the first United States time bank in its modern form, started in 1981 by this group called Grace Hill Settlement House that was working with integrating newcomers to the neighborhood. So immigrants and minority people. So they had they had 6 time bank stores when we went to visit. I was so intimidated by starting a time bank store until we went to St. Louis and met real people really doing it and seeing that it wasn't that hard. So they would get in donated goods and then make them available for time bank hours. You don't put a value on the goods, so technically and legally, people are paying their hours for the staffing of the store and for the labor that it takes to collect the goods, and they're getting the goods for free. And that's a way that it stays sort of above board legally, and gives people an opportunity to meet their real needs. So we started the Time Bank store in Allied Drive. Oh yeah, the other thing that was really cool about it is we saw no one had a fancy space. In fact, one of the stores was in a church, and there were just some shelves, and they had like accordion style locking like covers for the shelves. They'd unlock them and open them up, and then the store is open. So it became clear that it could be simple. So we started that store with like a couple $1,000s funding in 2008. It's still going. It's never gotten any other funding since then. Sometimes it limps along. Sometimes it does better. Sometimes we have a space that's more accessible. Right now it's in a basement, so we don't really advertise it much because we need a more accessible space, but now we're moving toward that by cooperating with other groups in the neighborhood. But the reason I bring that up is having that store where people could get donated goods is awesome. And there's a lot of action in Allied Drive, and people earn time bank hours, and I've gotten a lot of computers and a lot of stuff and a lot of help, and it's helped us grow this Allied Community Cooperative that's going now. But the thing that became very apparent is we really easily could just create a second tier economy. So, okay, well you can only earn time bank hours because you haven't been provided opportunities to earn money, so you can get the cast-offs from the market economy. So that's better than nothing, but what we realized is we really need to integrate all of these things and connect them. So what we realized is instead of making a time bank and a local currency and a savings pool and a makerspace, that instead we would make a cooperative around a common goal, and then we would steward all those things in service to the people in that group and in service to the project. So we created this type of mutual aid network cooperative. Legally it's a cooperative, but we have enhanced core principles, and they're up on the screen, and I'm not going to go through all of them. That they embody things pulled from time banking core principles in terms of redefining work and reciprocity, and then also cooperative principles, and also principles of governance of the commons that we pulled from Eleanor Ostrom. Because one of the things that we have realized is really key is another shortcoming of time banking and currencies, complementary currencies, is they're always focused on exchanging things in a structure of individual ownership. And we realize that we really, really want to hold up sharing as the goal that we're getting to. It brings me back to another quote that helped shape my thinking. From Charles Eisenstein in his book, Sacred Economics, he wrote something like, every time a new service is monetized, it's just eating the commons. Edgar Kahn, the founder of Time Banks USA, always talks about grief counseling as sort of the ultimate symptom that our communities have disintegrated, that we need to have professional grief counselors. So we really want to be thoughtful about sucking things from the market economy back into the commons, and I'm going to show you a little bit about the mechanics of that in a minute. But one of the problems, so going back to my history, I kind of came full circle. So I realized that the economy was a really big problem, and it was really a problem with me being able to do the work that I wanted to do, and others doing the work that they want to do, and work that would be actually in service to people and planet. But then I kind of went down the currency road and started getting really focused on economic things, and then finally, after some years, realized what we're really coming back to is just redesigning our work lives. So we think we can change this by redesigning our own work lives and the work lives of people in our networks. The economy is individuals doing stuff. It is people, resources, and flows. So we can change that in ourselves. So we started looking at work itself. And this framework is from a group in Belgium called Flora, and what they did was they worked with women from around the world, mostly in really low-income contexts, to really distill the fundamental types of work that are always being done in all communities. So whether or not we enjoy the terminology, it's something that's fluid, but I'll explain what these mean. So productive work is what we tend to think of as work, and it's the work that feeds and clothes and houses ourselves and our families. So it can be, in a lot of Western contexts, it is the work that you do to earn the money to do that. But it could also be making your own clothes, building your own home, growing your own food. Then self-work is what you do to increase your capacity. So it could be the education you get or the practice that you are performing. Community work, I think we know what that is, but it could be, making community gardens, beautifying our neighborhoods, helping develop programs for people. And then caregiving for others who are sick or elderly or young or have different abilities. And then there's this whole other area of work that's kind of like a meta area, keeping the balance, which tends to be a whole additional job for people because we're so out of whack in terms of what our needs are and then the ways that we're able to meet those needs. So we put this man in the middle. We would like the man to become the keeper of the balance and help reduce that load on people. But in the current economy, only one or maybe two of the fundamental types of work tend to be valued, and that's the productive work and then sometimes the self-work. Some people can get a higher rate of pay because they have a higher degree. Some people can earn more money because they've practiced something or they've gotten really good at sports. But as you have probably seen and experienced, only some people get to actually have that valued. So what we really believe is that between sharing and time banking and swaps, I kind of put those together because it's exchanging like for like, exchanging time for time, or exchanging stuff for stuff. And then price-based mutual credit, so that would be like let's or get systems where I could buy, my business could buy a refrigerator from your business for $1,000 worth of credits. We'd pay the taxes appropriately and account for that appropriately in our business, but what I would be owing back is $1,000 worth of goods and services to others in the network, if that makes sense. So taking sort of the time banking principle, but applying it in a business context and for highly professionalized services. And then we've started to refer to the savings pool model as a common fund because we want to take savings pools and sort of hybridize it and make a lot of different kinds of models where we pool money and put them into service. We believe that those 4 tools can probably meet most of people's material needs and most of the needs of projects. But then a really key piece of it that I think tends to get overlooked in a lot of sort of economic design or currency work is the social pieces, and I think that is even more essential. I really see changing the economy as a community organizing problem. So as it said in the video, one is work redesign, really helping people get a picture of what you would like to do. So I'm going to give you an example from my own life to try to make it more real. But I do run a coffee house. I'm there very little. I have been administering a time bank for the last 10 years, which I find extremely oppressive to administer a nonprofit organization. I hate that kind of work. I love doing the time banking part, but I never wanted to have to do fundraising and reporting. As Rearick mentioned, if I was having to do fundraising, I'd much rather do it in service of making films. So I've been running a nonprofit for a long time and spending a lot of my time doing that. I play music. I care about my neighborhood. I don't do a lot of work in my neighborhood. If I were redesigning my work life, one thing that was helpful to me is to envision what would I really like to be doing. And when I envisioned that, I realized I would actually like to be doing just about the same things, but in really different proportions. And then once I envision that, then I can start to move toward it. And then we changed, it says robust budgeting in the video, but we changed it to posterity budgeting. So how can you have a posh life and an austerity budget? And that's my favorite tool, and we're going to get to that. And I have some worksheets that I'm happy to share with you so you can do that for yourselves. And then project facilitation help, how to come together and make things happen in your own community. And then community investment help, learning how to create and run savings pools and all kinds of hybrids of that. So that's one thing that I'm going to be working to do here in New Zealand is see exactly how you're doing things, and then we'll be sharing templates. So one thing that I want to make clear is we have this network of humans, and we have some nice software to support it. It has a marketplace and an exchange. We can exchange hours and money and any form of mutual credit that we choose to create. It also has project management tools, so we can come together and be managing our project in there and then automatically get the hours that we spent on the task, get it coming into our account. What we're looking to create is not like a small group of us who are running this thing to make all these things. We think that everything is out there already. Someone has has really developed every single piece that we need. What we just want to do is connect it. We want to have portals where you can come in through any door and find anyone else in the world who's doing something really cool that you want to do, and you can see how they're doing it and what they're doing. They're sharing their materials, so you're not recreating the wheel, and you can contact them, you can talk to them, you can learn from their mistakes. We want to shift the culture so we're not afraid to take risks. Obviously, we need to do things differently, and we have to do it with a quickness. I think most people here seem to indicate that we have a sense of urgency for, for humans to be able to live on this planet with any semblance of quality of life. So let's get to it. So everyone chooses to share what they're doing, and then create some situations where you can find support without having to worry about a funder who's going to pull your funding if you don't meet your outcomes in the first year. And I'll explain a little bit more mechanically about how that works too. So there are a couple aspects of this that are particularly compelling to me, and one is the voluntarily redistributing wealth. So I'm very focused on this joyful voluntary wealth redistribution. So one of the things we're doing with sort of cooperative law and social agreements is creating situations. So I'm in a mutual aid network in my community. I'm just going to give you a hypothetical situation. I'm in a mutual aid network in my community, and what we are aiming to do is feed everyone one meal a day that they can access for whatever resource they have. So I really want to see this. I'd like some of the young people in my neighborhood helping organize this, and then go around with a lunch cart each day and offer everyone a meal. And if people need it for free, they get it for free. People can pay hours, they can pay money, they can put in, food from their garden or whatever they choose. So maybe someone on my block I'll pretend, this isn't true of me, but I'll pretend I work a full-time job, I make plenty of money, and I'm really short on time. So I've done my posterity budget, and I see that every week I could really use 4 time make hours to get respite care for my mother and get a meal made on the day that I don't have time. So every week I could really use 4 hours instead of money. So I can put 4 hours worth of my gross pay at my rate of pay into the common fund. Then that's there for other people to use, and I take 4 hours from the time make. So now we can start doing really voluntary redistribute our wealth for mutually beneficial means. And then there are all kinds of other ways to go flip it the other direction. But I just want to point that out because I think it's hard sometimes for people to see how we could get there. But I think it can be simple. And then another thing that I think is really important, especially going back to the example that I gave about Allied Drive with the sort of nonprofit or NGOs coming into the neighborhood, doing stuff and leaving, or maybe doing stuff that the neighbors don't want. One dynamic that happens, and one of my colleagues has this all mapped out, is all this money flows from the government and philanthropy supposedly into these neighborhoods that need it because they don't have enough money. Like, that's why they're in crisis, is they don't have access to these opportunities. But the way it flows in is to give it to a nonprofit who pays someone, often from a different neighborhood, to come in and do work there. It's very rare that it actually ever gets to the residents of that neighborhood. So mutual aid networks do provide an infrastructure where you could know that because they're in a mutual aid network, that it's a group of people who has the capacity and the technical support that they need to come together, identify what they want to have happen in their neighborhood, do it themselves, be compensated themselves. The money will stretch farther because you know they're going to sharing and time banking and other kinds of mutual credit before they choose to tap into the money. And they can choose when to bring people in from the outside and really start creating the community capacity and creating the ability to really invest directly in a community, and for the community itself to choose how its dynamics change and what they develop. And one little experiment I like to do, for some reason I dislike the term thought exercise, but I'll use it because I don't know what else to say. But one thing that I like to think about is, what would happen if every single person on your block had to work on the block for 1 hour a week? So actually, I just want to ask that as a question. Would someone like to answer? Do you have something that pops into mind? What do you think you would do if you had to work on your own block for 1 hour every week? Yes?
I would service bee berm planters.
Excellent. Bee berm planters?
Yeah.
Okay, great. And are those planters that attract bees?
Exactly.
Excellent. Beautiful. So we would have a neighborhood with bee berm planters on it. What else? Mm-hmm.
Our local orchard would be more cared for.
Excellent. You'd plant and care for a local orchard. What else?
Picking up litter.
You pick up litter.
Organise an outdoors activity for teenagers to get them away from screens.
Excellent. Organize outdoor activities from teenagers to get them away from screens. What else?
Be involved with the reading program.
Awesome. Be involved with the reading program. Someone said something.
Grow food.
Grow food.
Fix our road.
Fix the road. Great.
Teach paddle boarding.
Teach paddleboarding. Awesome.
Street party.
At a street party. Anything else?
Cut flowers for the
Pardon?
Talk.
Talk? Yes.
cut flowers for the local cafe.
Cut flowers for the local cafe. Beautiful. Those are beautiful examples. And I want to just share a little bit. This to me, this isn't to disparage the group that didn't come up with all these great ideas, but it's to show just the worldview and how it shifts. You all are already involved in living economies, and that's really clear. So I did this exercise with a group of real finance, like people focused on changing the financial system, and they have the same goals that we do. They do. And they're very immersed in this sort of complementary currency and changing the finance world, and they're doing excellent work. But when I asked that question of that group, it took, so people would say, everyone would understand each other better. Everyone would get to know each other. I'd say, but what would you do? So how would that happen? And I got so many esoteric answers. Oh, and everything would be cool in this way. I was like, but what would you do with your hands? it took, and then it really helped to click. So this is a reason that I really feel that what we need isn't to have people understand what's wrong with the system. I don't think people have to understand anything about money. I don't think it's possible to understand about money, how we currently use it. The way I see it is it's this form of money and this form of exchange is recent. It's very recent that it's so globalized. It's come about through a series, through happenstance and malice at times, and it's a hodgepodge of a bunch of crap. And it drives things so powerfully. So look at how it's affecting every single one of our lives and the people that we care about. It drives things so powerfully. So what happens if we make one with good intent, with principles behind it, with good design? How powerfully could that drive things? So I just do believe it can happen quickly and much more easily and much more joyfully than we think. And our strategy as mutual aid networks, again, is to have networks of networks, so people coming together around common goals and common humanity, and then sharing with each other, building real trust between different networks around the world. Instead of something like, some of you are probably familiar with Bitcoin. My perception of Bitcoin is that they're aiming to make a global currency that can replace trust. We don't want anything like that. We want networks of networks of networks that are building real trust between them. We have a very explicit goal to engage 100% of the people on the planet. I know that the 99% I know that that's helpful framing in some ways. I'm very, very much in favor of shifting it to the 100%. I think everybody is very damaged by the current system that we're in, whatever part of the spectrum that they're on. And one thing that I've seen in our time bank is we have a lot of people come into the time bank, not because they care anything about cooperation or economy or anything. They need a ride to the doctor. They don't qualify for any other program. They get a ride to the doctor through the time bank. But then as they're joining the time bank, they get asked about their other strengths and interests that often people aren't even asked about, especially if they're in a social service system. And they get to see all the other things that are offered. And then they get to talk to their driver on the way to their medical appointment. And I really believe that doing this stuff and getting an invitation to do it in a fun, enjoyable, caring way is what shifts people's consciousness. I don't disagree with that, we do it from all directions at the same time. The other thing I do see is I'm a big fan of the Occupy movement. And I want to share, in Madison, Wisconsin, we had a huge uprising before Occupy started in 2011. People occupied our Capitol for a month. We had 200,000 people around the Capitol repeatedly. And it came about because a horrible governor was elected who started just destroying unions and just started destroying all of worker protections. So we had 200,000 people around the Capitol, and all I could hear in terms of a demand was, we want good state jobs for 40 hours a week with decent benefits. And I thought, with 200,000 people around the Capitol, is that the best we can dream? We need to learn to dream better. So I don't think anyone should have to do anything for 40 hours a week unless they really want to. The world, this is from Bernard Lietaer, but the world does not need and therefore will never provide 6 billion jobs. But there's an infinite amount of good work to do, to weatherize our homes, to beautify our areas, to take care of people, to make sure everyone has fun things to do, everyone gets a chance to build up their skills and abilities. So another thing mechanically about how we're doing this, so I mentioned that we have our software set up. Everything that we have right now is a rough draft. So it's actually the really perfect time to invite people in to shape it. Because this is for everybody, it's not a small group to make this all. So we have our rough draft of open source software that can do this stuff, manage projects and exchange and have a marketplace. And one of the things that we intend to do is have ways to make it really visible. What do you need to carry out your projects? And have people be able to see how they can contribute. This is taken from the Yes Men. I don't know if people, raise your hand if you know the Yes Men. I love them, and they're on our advisory board now, so they're huge heroes of mine, and now they're collaborating with us. So they gave us this from their website, and so we're working now to implement it. So we'd be able to see where I could go look at other people's projects, and I can donate money anytime, so we can have it be an ongoing crowdfunding thing for people, always, and start driving traffic through it so you can get money toward your projects. But then if I want to get involved in more interesting ways, then I need to join the Humans Cooperative, and that causes me to sign on to the core principles. We can't participate unless we're upholding the core principles. And that's another piece that we're building in is good governance. We're working with sociocracy and experimenting with some good governance so we really do this well and learn to work together better. So if I want to start participating in giving time, if I want to share other kinds of resources, maybe I have frequent flyer miles that I can exchange with someone so someone else can go do a tour like this and learn from other people. Or maybe we need material goods, then I can join and I can contribute that and we can pay attention to how we're doing in our budget. I also want to create these for individuals. So I, as an individual, will have my posterity budget up here and I can see what kinds of resources I need for what my needs actually are. And I really see through these methods, and there's some other cool things that we're linking them up with, but I really can see in my mind's eye a time where we can just be doing what we want to do in the world and managing our work lightly in these ways, and our accounts can be filling up with the kinds of credits we need in order to really have a good life. So this is the posterity budgeting workshop or worksheet, and we've just broken things down into some really, I know you can barely read it, but some really basic categories. Food, space, wellness, transportation, but also including education, investment in the future, giving, care, leisure, creativity. And then we use this framework. Every single thing that you need, we want to use this pyramid of abundance. So we want to go toward the most abundant things. So for example, food. For food, is there a way I can meet my food needs by sharing more? So maybe what I can do is I can help plant a commons garden. I might earn a couple time bank hours a week for my work on that commons garden, and I might save $50 a month. So then, at the end of that, I've saved this money and I have a surplus of time bank hours. Now I can invest those into getting help with doing some music booking. And so I'll pay hours for people to help set up shows for me and help promote them where I'm going. And then I might start earning a little bit more money at music. Then I might be able to put that more money into the common fund for someone else to use because I've gotten really good at focusing on the sharing and the time banking. So I think you could already see it, but these are also letter grades that we use in the US. I don't know if you have the same letter grade system, but A is your best grade and F is your failing grade. So A is for abundance. The most abundant is sharing. B, bank your time or stuff. So the second most abundant, if you can't share it, just exchange straight up. C, credit instead of debt. So the price-based mutual credit in the business context. D, decentralize the risk, de-escalate the pressure by participating in a savings pool or a common fund. So again, I think that these 4 things can probably meet most of the needs of most people and projects. And then F, if all else fails, get a effing job. So this is another way that we can voluntarily redistribute wealth. If I only need to work 20 hours a week to meet my monetary needs, then there's 20 hours a week of paid work available for someone else. So this is another way to take all these ideas and take it out of the hands of employers. Oh yeah, I started talking about Occupy for a particular reason though, which is the other perspective is it's essential to push on the powers that be, but things are working for them. Things are working for the bankers. It's only set up to work for the bankers. So I think that we're at a real disadvantage if we're just trying to push on our government and our bankers and our corporate structures. But when we start to develop our own capacity, our own self-sufficiency and interdependence, get out from under their thumb a little bit, first of all, we can pull the rug out from under them. We can. They can approve the pipeline through Standing Rock, but if we aren't using fossil fuels and if we're getting our cities to divest from the funders of that, there won't be a pipeline. So our strategy, what we have now is we have 8 pilot sites, and this is where they are. We have 6 in the United States, 1 in Hull, UK, 1 in Rearick, South Africa. I'm going to say a couple words about what a few of them are doing, just to give you a picture, and then I'll take some questions and discussion. But so in Lansing, Michigan, they're doing an energy co-op. They've started their first savings pool recently, and they've started installing solar panels on buildings in Lansing. In Madison, we are about to take our youth court program farther and start working in the north side to pilot something that will start building young people's ability to start enterprises, and we're gonna, an early step is to teach some young people in the neighborhood to do the kind of software coding we need to build our software out, but also make games and apps and things so they will make something that's fun and useful for them. That's one piece of it. We're also creating a co-working space and a CSA drop point in another neighborhood that I'm working in. Hull UK has been doing a lot of stuff with food systems, and they're connecting up their time bank and Hull Coin and a lot of local partners to really build a more powerful system. Rearick, South Africa is about working toward a clinic there, but they've done a lot already to get clean water to people. They have a women and girls run business that they've created to create menstrual products so girls will stay in school. So these are the current 8 formal pilot sites that we have, but we've been hearing from people in New Zealand, in Croatia, in Palestine and Israel, the Indigenous Food Sovereignty Network in the Pacific Northwest, United States. Someone came to visit our time banks from South Korea recently. So we expect by the end of this year we could have a pilot on every continent. And as I said, then we're aiming to develop networks of real trust between them. So our goal, and I believe it's achievable, our goal is, I don't know how many years from now, maybe a couple of years, maybe 10 years, but our goal is that at some point in our foreseeable future, every single person on the planet could be in a network, indirectly networked with every other person on the planet. We cannot have an incentive to outsource for cheap labor. We can only have an incentive to support each other, to learn from what's working well in our different locations and do better. So I have steps to deepen participation, but what I'm here to do is to learn from you and invite you to participate, become one of the 100%. And I would like to have some discussion and questions, but first I want to just close this part with a quote from John Lennon. A dream we dream alone is just a dream. A dream we dream together is reality.
I'm sitting here completely inspired by your talk, and I was wondering if you have podcasts
Yes, we have a lot of things at mutualaidnetwork.org, and that's one of the things that we need to do more, though, is make some shorter, more pithy things. So we have a number of things, but yes, it's definitely something that we need to start doing more. Thank you.
Does Dane County Time Bank do any work with immigrant and refugee communities in Madison?
Not at the moment, no. But it is a vision for mutual aid networks. The Time Bank is, once I split off from the Time Bank, we really have split the locking down the programs and the neighbor-to-neighbor exchange within the Time Banks, and then the mutual aid network part is the part about taking it farther. So there's actually quite a lovely vision in Hull about really doing that more deeply, and we were talking about linking young people from a high school with immigrant families to learn how to cook their food and like work on cooking together, and then have a big feast, Tastes of Hull, and start doing those regularly, and then inviting people into participating in mutual aid network work overall. So there are some lovely visions for it, and we haven't done it yet in Dane County, but we want to.
Bruce here. I didn't actually know exactly what I came here for these 3 days, but I think I just found out. Opportunities to take this further while we're here. We have a session with you. What other opportunities might we have?
I'm around for a while. I'm not clear on my agenda, but Shuri is. Would you like to say? Thank you.
I don't have the information with me exactly, but Stephanie's schedule looks something along the lines of she leaves here on the 7th, which I think is Friday, goes to Motueka and is being met by people there and speaking in Golden Bay and Motueka, then goes through to, flies from Nelson to Wellington, is met by Kirsten, who's here, Sonia or Chris, who are here, speaks in Wellington, then goes up on Monday, speaks in Wellington, then goes up to Carterton, and is Helen's been responsible for organising, well, something's happening in Carterton.
Great.
Tuesday night, Tuesday the 11th. From there goes to Palmy, and Phil and Andrea, is it, from Palmy, are putting something together on Wednesday the 13th. Thursday there's travel from Palmy up to Rotorua, where we will pick up Stephanie from Rotorua, and then there's some free time over Easter. And on the Tuesday night after Easter, Stephanie's speaking in Whakatane, and we go from there. I believe we're taking Stephanie, or meeting someone halfway between there and Waikato Time Bank for Wednesday night in Waikato. And then we have not yet heard from Auckland, but there may be something happening in Auckland on Thursday or Friday. But the person that was involved with that hasn't got back to us yet. So she's got a full schedule and then flies out on Saturday the 22nd, I believe.
And I'm happy. One of the things that I really like to do with people is do visioning exercises for your own area and your own projects. So I'm happy to do, I'm here to serve while I'm here, and again, super grateful to be here and be so well cared for. That's what mutual aid networks are all about. So you're all welcome to come to the US, and I'll try to take care of you just as well as you're taking care of me.
Excuse me, I actually have to leave, but can I ask a quick question
Yeah.
before I go? Sorry. Sure.
You said in your talk that things were already happening in New Zealand. Whereabouts in New Zealand? Who's been contacting you to start? Is something starting here, like an actual, someone said, I want a man.
A number of people have been joining us on, we have a web orientation once a month, and some of you here have joined some of them and expressed interest. Shuri, did you?
I would really like to see start out of this, and this is something that I've expressed to a couple of people by email, but I would really like to see us start a mutual aid network, Aotearoa. The acronym then becomes MANA.
All right.
And how good is that?
Beautiful. Thank you. So we have 4 more minutes.
Stephanie, I'm not sure if it's quite the same, but we are starting in Whakatane something which I think is like a mutual aid network. But what it is, the community has come together and looked at issues of isolation and vulnerability, particularly as older people, as a lot of us are getting older and our children are overseas and we only have one child. And we've looked at ways around the world of coming together intentionally to support one another. And we're getting a lot of support from our mayor, deputy mayor, and other people in our town. So we started this well before I heard of a mutual aid network. So we're talking about, I'm going to talk about it this afternoon at, I think, the latest time slot, but I'm hoping you'll be able to come and help us develop our ideas even further. And when you're in Whakatane, which is where we're from, also talk about how that can develop. So we're really looking forward to some synergy around this.
Great, that would be wonderful. And I want to be clear, and I wasn't clear during my talk, you don't have to be incorporated any particular way or have any kind of name to be a mutual aid network. You can join the Humans as your project or organization. And there's a beautiful resource for what you're doing, which is our pilot site in Pennsylvania. Was started by someone who ran a hospital-based time bank for 13 years, Kathy Perlow, and they initiated a lot of projects in there, but one is neighbor care teams. Now she's retired, so she can work on this from the community side, and they're in a federally qualified health center, and they're building neighbor care teams, and they have a special emphasis on refugees and immigrants and people experiencing homelessness. So anyhow, that they have a lot of cool things that they've been doing that we could all learn from.
My GP has been keen on time banking ever since I introduced her to the idea, and she has joined a time bank and hopes to enrol her practice. So can you give us examples of that actually working? Because, you know, there's issues around safety and, you know, things to do with, you know.
Yes.
Yeah, go on.
So, so I do know of a clinic in Portland, Maine, in the United States, who's been taking time bank hours for clinical services for quite a while, and so they set aside a certain amount of time. I think they have like a certain number of appointments that they take time bank hours for. There's one in Rushy Green, UK that's centered in a surgery, and the doctor will actually prescribe time bank involvement to people because so many people come to the doctor because they're isolated and depressed. And my understanding is it's just a different form of payment. It's just like if you were taking insurance or if you were taking private payment. So I believe that all your regular licensing, all those things apply and your insurance is fine. And that's how it's worked for us. So we actually have been looking in Dane County to get more clinical services to just decide how much they could do in time bank hours and do that. And sort of between the pro bono work that people do and the paid work. Is that enough?
Well, just one question about that though, and that is my understanding is that one doesn't do one's tax-paying profession in a time bank. In New Zealand.
I think so you would need to check. We believe that if you just do it on the margins that in the United States and the UK, we're loosely recognized as not taxable, but there's definitely a gray area. That's why we put into place the price-based mutual credit piece. So if you were putting a lot of your professional time in, you would do it that way. So you'd be paying the taxes on that. So I think if you keep, I saw that. So if you have a question about how it works? So if I take in a certain number of dollars worth of price-based credit, I just account for that like I brought in cash. I pay the taxes on it like it was cash, but I'm just owing it back in goods and services to the network. So we could talk more about it, but we're figuring out how to do it in above board, and that's part of what pilot sites commit to, is doing the legal research that's applicable in their area and then sharing it to clear the way for others in the same area. So I'm happy to talk more in depth about how we see that happening, but I don't know all the ins and outs of the laws in each of our places. There was one here and one here, and then we should probably stop if that's, oh, it's 9:31, so I don't know if you want to take two more or not.
I'll just take this one.
Oh, okay.
I've been given the honour of thanking you for your speech, and really quickly I fell in love with a few things. So one is that, and you speak from your heart, and I really appreciate that, and your commitment to what you're doing and your sacrifice that you make, but most of all your idealism. And I just have a little quote that says, you see things and say why, but I dream things that never were and say why not. By George Bernard Shaw. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.